Hello, today we're going to go over factoring trinomials when a is equal to 1, but also when a is bigger than 1. And we're going to be doing this by the x method. So if a is equal to 1, you can use the x method. And what a equal to 1 means is that the coefficient on the x squared term is 1, okay, or it's not there. It's not. We don't write it down because it's an invisible 1. So if you have an invisible 1, these are the easier type of problems because they require less steps. Okay, so we're going to do an example and then we're going to go over the steps as well. So in order to factor x squared plus 7x minus 30, first you draw your x. Okay, that's step 1, draw your x. On the top, you're going to do a times c. So the first coefficient times the third coefficient. So 1 times negative 30 is negative 30. That goes on the top. Okay, that's step 2. Find AC and write it on the top. Step 3, you're going to find B and write it below. B in this problem is 7, so you put 7 below. That is B. Now that you have the top number and the bottom number, you have to find two numbers that when you multiply them, you get negative 30, and when you add them, you get 7. And here is where you have to try a few combinations. You may not always get it the first time. So for example, for 30, you might be thinking, oh, 15 times 2 gives you 30, but it doesn't add up to 7. 15 plus 2 is 17. 15 minus 2 is 13. So we have to pick two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and add to 7. And you can make one or both of them negative to make sure that the signs match. In this case, 10 times negative 3 is negative 30, and then 10 minus 3 is 7. So we know that 10 and negative 3 are our two numbers that we wanted to find. So that's step 4. You find two numbers that when you multiply them, you equal the top, and when you add them, you equal the bottom. You write them on the left and on the right side. Then we're pretty much done. Your answer is going to be parentheses x, and then the missing numbers are the two numbers that you found. So if you found 10 and negative 3, you're going to do positive 10 and negative 3. And then that's your answer, x plus 10, x minus 3. You can check your answer by doing an error model. And the error model is going to be x times x is x squared. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. 10 times x is 10x. When you combine 10x and negative 3x, you get 7x. And then 10 times negative 3 is negative 30. You could always double check if you want to check your work. Let's do the second example. N squared plus 5n minus 6. You're going to draw your x. Top number is a times c. When a is 1, your top number is just going to be the third. Okay, but that's only because a is 1. So negative 6 on top, and then the 5 is b that goes on the bottom. Two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get negative 6. Your options are 6 and 1, 2 and 3. Those are the factors of 6, but it looks like 6 and negative 1 are going to work because multiplier, they get negative 6. And when you do 6 minus 1, you get 5. So since a is equal to 1, your answer is just n plus 6 and n minus 1. The letter doesn't really matter. Here we had x's and now we have n's. That doesn't really matter. It can be any letter. Okay, and here I just showed you how to check your work. Once you have factor form, you can actually do an area model or the box method. And you can do n plus 6 times n minus 1. Fill out your box and then cancel the middle terms, combine like terms, and then you should get what you started with. Letter C, a squared minus a minus 12. Do your x. 12, negative 12 goes on top, negative 1 goes on the bottom. This is a negative 1. And then 4 times 3 is 12. Make the 4 negative because one of those has to be negative in order to get a negative up here. And then if you have to get negative 1 down here, that tells you that the 4 has to be negative because we want it to be negative 1. If we wanted it to be positive 1, then the 3 would have been negative, so that would be 4 minus 3. And that's it. Since a is 1, in other words, the coefficient is 1, we just put our two numbers, negative 4 and 3, in the factor form. Letter D, one last one. X squared plus 3x plus 1, you put the 1 on top and the 3 on the bottom. And you try to think of two numbers that when you multiply them, you get 1. Well, the only option is 1 times 1. And we know that 1 times 1 is 1, but 1 plus 1 is not 3, it's actually 2. So if you cannot find, or if there aren't any, I mean, you should keep trying, but if after you're pretty sure that you tried everything and it didn't work, then you can just say that it's not factorable. And yes, some of these quadratics are not factorable. We call them prime. Okay, prime meaning that you cannot factor them further. Now, if a is greater than 1, then we're going to do the Xbox method. Notice how first we had the X method, and now this one is the Xbox method. Camera down a little. Okay, so the Xbox method is there's an additional step. We're gonna follow the same steps that we did before, but instead of after we do our X, instead of writing our answer immediately, we have to do an additional step, which is called the box method. So let's take a look. If we have to factor 2x squared minus 5x minus 3, I made a mistake here. It should be negative 3. Okay. Okay, so do the same thing, a times c at the top. Now earlier, we would just look at the third number. However, here, since a is not 1, in this case a is 2, we have to do a times c. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. The bottom number is b. B is just negative 5. So then we have to think of two numbers that when you multiply them, you get negative 6, and when you add them, you get negative 5. Again, to get 6, you have to do 6 times 1 or 2 times 3. You guess and check. And in this case, 6 times 1 is 6, and we want to make one of those two negative. Since this is negative 5, we want to make the 6 negative because negative 6 plus 1 is negative 5. Now, instead of going straight to our answer, we have to do the additional step, the box method. Okay, we did the X, and now we're doing the box. How do we do the box? Well, first we draw a box, a 2 by 2 box. And the first thing we fill out about the box is the inside. So ignore the outside for now. First, we're going to fill in the inside. On the top left box, we're going to put the first term, the whole thing, 2x squared. That's what goes here. And then the bottom right box is going to be the last term, negative 3, negative 3. Then the two diagonal boxes are going to be the two numbers that we found with an x attached. So negative 6x and 1x. It doesn't matter where you put each one. You can put them in any order. You're going to end up getting the same answer at the end. So after you have the 4 boxes filled out, then your job is to get the outside. The outside are going to be your factors. So how do we get these numbers outside? Well, for example, this one right here, we're going to find the greatest common factor in these two boxes. Okay, the greatest common factor between 2x squared and 1x, well, they just have an x in common. So we take it out and it's right here. Same thing for this bottom number, negative 6x and negative 3. They have a 3 in common, and the sign is always going to be the closest sign that it has. So since this 6 is negative, we're going to take out a negative 3. Okay. Now this top number, you do the top and bottom boxes. So 2x squared and negative 6x. 2 goes into both of them, and x goes into both of them. So you're going to take out a 2x, and you're going to take out a positive 2x because this 2x is positive. The negative is too far away. You always do the sign of the one that is closest to it. And then finally, 1x and negative 3, they don't really have anything in common except 1, so we put 1. And then our final answer is going to be x minus 3 times 2x plus 1. X minus 3 times 2x plus 1. If you wanted to check, I mean, the error model is right here, right? So you can double check and make sure you get that. That's how we do the Xbox method. Let's do more examples, just so that you have more practice. So if we have 3a squared plus 4a plus 1, what you're going to do is first draw your x. 3 times 1 goes on top, that's 3. 4 goes on the bottom. Two numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. So you have 3 and 1. You don't go straight to the answer because a is not 1, so you have to do the X box method. You put the 3a squared on the top left. You put the 1 on the bottom right. And then the 4a is split into 3a and 1a. So 3a and 1a. And again, you can flip the order. It doesn't matter of these two. Then you do greatest common factor. Between 3a squared and 1a, the greatest common factor is a. Between 3a and 1, the greatest common factor is 1. Between 3a squared and 3a, the greatest common factor is 3a. And then between 1a and 1, it's just 1. So your answer is going to be 3a plus 1, a plus 1, right here. Letter C, 2m squared plus 3m minus 9. The top number is going to be 2 times negative 9 is negative 18. Bottom number is 3. Two numbers that when you multiply them, you get negative 18 and you add to 3. 6 times negative 3. Okay, and then 6 minus 3. So what you do with these two numbers, those are the diagonals with a letter attached, in this case m. And then the top left is this term, and the bottom right is this term. Find the GCF of both of them. So 2m squared and negative 3m, they have an m in common. 6m and negative 9, they have a 3 in common, and we make both of them positive because the closest term is positive. Up here, we have between 2m squared and 6m, we have a 2 and a letter m. Take that out. And between negative 3m and negative 9, you take out negative 3. So your answer is 2m minus 3, m plus 3. Another example, okay? X 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. Negative 4 on the bottom. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. And then negative 7 plus 3 is negative 4. You put the 3v squared on the top left, the negative 7 on the bottom right, and then the negative 4 gets split into negative 7v and 3v. So negative 7v and 3v. Find the greatest common factor. Between 3v squared and 3v is 3v. And between negative 7v and negative 7 is negative 7. Between 3v squared and negative 7v, you just have v. And 3v and negative 7 don't really have anything other than 1 in common. So your answer is going to be 3v minus 7, v plus 1. Okay, the order in which you write this doesn't matter. These two, you can flip them and that's okay. All right, so letter E is more of the same, so I'm just going to show it to you. You can pause the video and go over it as well. The last example I'm going to go over is letter F, 3x squared plus 18x plus 15. This one, you could try and do the Xbox method, but remember, you should always check to see if there's a greatest common factor that you can take out from the beginning, because otherwise you're going to end up with a longer and harder problem. So instead, we're going to see, okay, what do these two guys have in common, the three of them? They all have a 3. So you can take out the 3, that's the greatest common factor, and then you're left with x squared plus 6x plus 5. Because 3 times x squared is 3x squared, 3 times 6x is 18x, 3 times 5 is 15. So you leave the 3 on the outside, and then you look inside and say, hey, this is a trinomial, and the coefficient is 1. Remember, we're ignoring the 3 because it's not part of the parentheses. If the coefficient is 1, then we don't have to do x box method. All we have to do is x method. On the top is a times c, so 1 times 5 is 5. On the bottom is b is just 6. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. So your factors are x plus 5, x plus 1 with the 3 on the outside. And that is it.